Has God ever removed someone from your life and you couldn't understand why? You didn't come across this message by chance if you felt confused about why certain people suddenly walked out of your life, if you've been carrying the weight of unanswered questions, heartbreak, or silence from those you once trusted. This word is for you. Sometimes what feels like rejection is actually protection. Sometimes what breaks your heart is what saves your destiny. And what you thought was the end is only the beginning of something far greater than you imagined. God has been working behind the scenes not just to bless you, but to build you, to prepare you, to clear the path for something sacred. He's been removing what cannot stay so you can grow into everything He has planned. You may not understand it yet, but heaven sees what you can't. In this message, you're going to hear the truth your spirit has been needing, the kind of truth that doesn't just comfort you, but wakes you up. This is a divine reminder that your life is not falling apart. It's being rearranged by the hands of a loving God who has set you apart for something higher. So don't look away. Don't click off. What you're about to hear could shift your perspective, heal your heart, and prepare you for the next chapter of your life. Stay with me. God has something to say to you. Divine separation is often misunderstood, especially when we are in the midst of emotional pain. When someone walks out of your life, when a friendship suddenly fades, or when a relationship crumbles, it can feel like loss, like failure, like abandonment. But from a kingdom perspective, it may not be any of those things. It may actually be divine protection. God, in His infinite wisdom and mercy, sees the full picture of our lives, past, present, and future. He knows the consequences of each relationship, every partnership, and even the seemingly innocent connections we form. Sometimes what we view as sudden disconnection is heaven's intervention. It's not that God is being cruel, it's that He is being kind, in a way that only eternity will help us fully understand. There are moments when God removes people because they are no longer aligned with His divine plan for your life. You may not see it right away, but if you look back over your life, there were connections that felt so vital in one season, but became heavy burdens in the next. The truth is, not everyone is meant to walk with you forever. Some were only assigned to your life for a chapter, not the entire story. And when we attempt to drag old chapters into new seasons, we create confusion, frustration, and spiritual delay. God's plan is always about forward movement, not settling into comfort zones or familiar patterns. So when He removes someone, it is never random, it is intentional, strategic, and often urgent. When God is preparing to do something greater in your life, He will begin by clearing out what cannot go with you. That includes people. Some people are simply not equipped to handle your anointing, your growth, or your calling. Their presence might distract you, discourage you, or worse, pull you off course. God, in His mercy, does not want to see your destiny compromised by a connection that looks good on the outside but is dangerous to your soul. He removes to protect. He subtracts to elevate. He isolates to develop. It may feel like rejection, but it's heaven's redirection. This divine separation is not just about your safety, it's also about your purpose. Sometimes God removes people not because they were bad, but because they already served their purpose in your life. Their time was up, and when God closes a door, it's because He's opening another one that leads to a greater dimension of who you were always meant to be. But if you're too busy trying to pry that old door open, you'll miss what's waiting on the other side. Trusting God in these moments means surrendering your grip on people and outcomes and believing that He knows what's best for your heart, even when your heart is breaking. Many times, the pain of separation is actually the evidence of God's hand at work. The confusion, the silence, the abrupt change, those are signs that something eternal is being worked out behind the curtain of your understanding. You may feel like you've lost something, but in truth, you've been spared. What you thought was essential was actually a weight. What you thought you couldn't live without was holding you back, and God, in His perfect love, will remove what is harmful to your journey, even when you cry for Him to let it stay. The people God removes might not be evil, but they can be wrong for your future. and if you insist on keeping them in your life, you may delay what heaven is trying to deliver. God has already walked ahead of you. He sees traps, distractions, betrayals you haven't encountered yet. So he disrupts your plans in order to protect his. That isn't cruelty, it's covenant. It's the love of a father who will not let you walk blindly into destruction just because you're emotionally attached. You are not being punished, you are being protected. Not everyone is meant to go where God is taking you. This truth can be hard to accept, especially when it involves people you love, people you've shared deep bonds with, or individuals who were once vital to your growth. But spiritual elevation comes with a cost, and often that cost is separation. God calls you upward, not only in blessing, but also in character, in discipline, in purpose. And as he calls you upward, some relationships will naturally fall away, not because they're all toxic or evil, but because their assignment in your life has ended. They were only meant to walk with you to a certain point. The journey beyond that is sacred. It requires a kind of purity, focus, and faith that not everyone around you will understand or support. When God begins to move you into your next level, he doesn't just change your circumstances, he begins to change your circle. He sifts through your environment, cutting off attachments that are not rooted in the same soil of faith, vision, or obedience. Some people are bound to the things God is trying to free you from. If you keep them close, they can drag you back into cycles you've been delivered from. And while it may feel like loyalty to keep them near, in reality it can be disobedience. God doesn't promote us based on comfort. He promotes us based on readiness and alignment. Holding on to people who aren't aligned with your future can stall your destiny. There is a heaviness that comes from trying to carry everyone with you. It can cloud your judgment, slow your progress, and even dull your discernment. You start making decisions not based on God's voice, but on your need to keep people happy or included. But divine elevation is not democratic. It's not about group consensus. It's about surrender. And sometimes that surrender includes letting go of those who cannot walk the narrow path with you. The road that leads to life is narrow, and few find it. That includes relationships. The higher you go, the smaller the circle becomes, not because you're better than others, but because your calling requires something different, something sacred, something costly. Think of Abraham, called out of everything familiar to follow the voice of God. He couldn't take everyone with him. Even those who started the journey with him, like Lot, eventually had to part ways. God didn't explain every separation. He just required obedience. The same is true today. You won't always have the answers. You won't always understand why someone had to leave or why the connection had to break. But you can trust that if God allowed it, it is part of his divine design for your growth. Some people would have kept you in yesterday when God was trying to push you into tomorrow. It's not about hatred or bitterness. It's about obedience. It's about protecting the oil on your life. You've been anointed for something sacred, and not everyone can handle that weight. Some people are more attached to the version of you that God is calling you to leave behind. They don't see who you're becoming. They only see who you were. And if you stay too connected to them, you'll start shrinking to fit into spaces God has already called you out of. Your future demands courage, and sometimes that courage means walking alone for a season, trusting that God will place new people in your life who are designed for where you're going, not just where you've been. When you elevate in the Spirit, it disrupts the familiar. Your appetite changes, your desires shift. The places you once loved no longer satisfy you. That's how you know God is working deeply within you. But those around you who haven't gone through the same transformation may not understand, and if you wait for their approval, you might miss your assignment. God didn't call them to carry your cross, he called you. And sometimes, the weight of that calling is too heavy for the wrong hands to touch. You must be willing to say goodbye to what no longer fits your future. God sees the hearts you cannot. We often judge by appearances, by outward gestures, by the way someone treats us in public, or the words they say that sound kind and supportive. But there is a realm of truth that only God can see, a realm that looks beyond the surface and into the deepest corners of a person's soul. While we look at faces, God looks at hearts, and because of that, He sometimes removes people from our lives not based on what we see, but based on what He knows. He sees the motives we can't discern. He hears the conversations we were never meant to hear. He knows the intentions that have not yet shown their face. And when He removes someone, it's not always to punish them, it's to protect you. There are people who come close not because they love you, but because they love what you carry. They may be drawn to your favor, your kindness, your influence, or your peace. But when pressure comes, or when you begin to grow into what God truly calls you to be, their real posture is exposed. That's why God sometimes allows people to leave you before their mask falls off. He allows disconnection before destruction. It may confuse you in the moment, but it will make sense later. You may feel abandoned, but in truth, you've been delivered. Because if the wrong person stays too long, they can damage your identity, distract your vision, or derail your destiny. God is not just watching who's standing with you, He's watching why they're standing with you. He's not only seeing their presence in your life, He's measuring the weight of their purpose in it. Some people look like they're walking with you, but they are really walking behind you, waiting for a moment to strike. And you may never know their hidden resentment or silent competition, but God does. And in His mercy, He will remove them before they reach the place where they can do lasting harm. That's not rejection, that's rescue. This is why we must trust God's pruning, even when it feels like pain. He's not just removing people for the sake of emptiness. He's making space for those who carry the right spirit. The wrong heart in the right position can cause chaos. It's not enough for someone to say they support you. Their spirit must align with God's will for your life. That's why discernment is so critical. But when you lack it, God often steps in to do what you can't see. He will create tension, misunderstandings, or even closed doors, not to hurt you, but to help you walk in the truth you couldn't detect on your own. Sometimes we get attached to people who were never attached to our purpose. They may have been part of our comfort, part of our history, but not part of our future. And because we are emotional beings, we try to hold on with our hearts, even when God is saying, let go. We keep trying to rewrite chapters God has already closed. But God is not sentimental about your destiny. He is intentional. If someone's heart is not right for where He is taking you, He will remove them, no matter how good things looked on the outside. We must remember that God is a jealous God, not out of insecurity, but out of perfect love. He knows what relationships will compete for His place in your heart. He knows which people will eventually plant seeds of doubt or division. He knows who will cheer for you in public and curse you in private. So He acts. He allows the leaving. He closes the door. He even permits betrayal, not to break you, but to expose what you could not see. Trust Him. He is not blind to your pain, but He is far more concerned about your future than your feelings. Because He loves you too much to let the wrong heart travel with you into your calling. Seasons change, and so do assignments. One of the greatest challenges in a believer's journey is learning to let go when God says a season is over. We often cling to what is familiar, to the people who brought us comfort, to routines that made us feel safe. But in the kingdom of God, clinging to what has expired can become disobedience. The spiritual walk requires sensitivity to divine timing. What once was a blessing can turn into a burden if it stays past its season. Relationships, opportunities, and even certain responsibilities that were once fruitful may no longer carry the grace they once had. And when that happens, God will begin to stir your spirit, create disruption, or even allow separation, not to punish you, but to prepare you for the next phase of your purpose. God is a God of order, and He aligns His people with seasons for a reason. Just like nature moves through spring, summer, fall, and winter, our spiritual lives also move through seasons. There's a time to plant and a time to harvest. There's a time to build and a time to break down. When God ordains a new season, He He also shifts the people, places, and plans connected to it. Some individuals were assigned to your life to help you get through a storm, teach you a lesson, or walk with you through a specific phase. But when that phase ends, their assignment might also end. It doesn't mean they were evil or that the relationship was a mistake. It simply means their part in your story has been completed. Holding on to expired assignments can become a form of spiritual suffocation. It can block new growth, delay progress, and even damage your faith. You start wondering why things feel heavy, why joy is harder to find, why peace seems to escape you. But the truth may be that God has already shifted the season and your spirit hasn't caught up. We are often tempted to drag old relationships and outdated expectations into new territory. But God is not obligated to bless what He has already moved on from. He blesses obedience, not nostalgia. If you keep watering what God has uprooted, you'll find yourself exhausted and confused, wondering why your efforts no longer produce fruit. This is why discernment is so crucial. Not every loss is a demonic attack. Not every ending is the enemy. Sometimes it is the hand of God clearing your path, pruning your circle, and making room for what's next. If you try to carry yesterday's weight into tomorrow's purpose, you may find yourself off balance, frustrated, and out of alignment with heaven. God will never give you a new assignment while you're still clinging to an expired one. He waits for your release before He reveals what's next. There are divine connections waiting for you, new levels of anointing, fresh revelations, and doors that won't open until you're willing to trust God with your endings. Faith is not just about believing for the new. It's also about letting go of the old. It's trusting that the God who brought you through the last season knows exactly what you need in the next one. And just as He brought the right people before, He will bring the right people again. But first, you must release the ones who were never meant to cross into your future. It takes spiritual maturity to stop praying for something God has already removed. It takes trust to stop chasing after what once was and instead focus on what is coming. You're not being punished when people leave or when seasons shift. You're being positioned. Every divine ending is a setup for a new beginning, and every release is preparing you for a greater encounter with God's will. When the season changes, respond in faith, not in fear. Trust the timing of the one who writes the story. Painful endings are often new beginnings in disguise. In the life of a believer, nothing is wasted, not even heartbreak. When something breaks in your life, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, a business, or a dream, it may feel like the end of the road, but in God's kingdom, endings are rarely final. Instead, they are often divine transitions, carefully designed to move you closer to the fullness of your purpose. The sorrow may feel unbearable at first, but hidden within that sorrow is often the seed of something sacred. God uses loss to launch you. He allows what feels like ruin to become the very soil where resurrection begins. What you thought was meant to last forever might have only been assigned to push you to the next level. There are connections that feel so permanent, you can't imagine life without them. But when God allows those ties to break, it's because He sees what you can't. He knows what lies ahead. He knows the people, places, and things that would have hindered your next chapter. So when He lets something fall apart, it is not cruelty, it is construction. He's building something new, something greater, something more aligned with His perfect will for your life. But new wine requires new wineskins, and sometimes the pain you feel is the tearing away of the old, so He can pour something fresh into your spirit. Many times we beg God to restore what He's already decided to remove. We cry out for the thing we lost, unaware that heaven has already written something better into our future. But because our human vision is limited by emotion and time, we grieve what we had instead of anticipating what is coming. That's why faith is not just about trusting God in the blessing, it's also about trusting Him in the breaking. You have to believe that even when the doors close, even when people walk away, even when the dream dies, God is still in control. His hands are never off your life. He's not absent in the storm. He's steering the ship. There's a certain kind of clarity that comes only through heartbreak. Pain strips away illusions. It reveals what was real and what was only temporary. It sharpens your discernment, strengthens your prayer life, and pushes you deeper into the arms of God. In moments of loss, when your heart is raw and your spirit is fragile, you begin to hear God more clearly, because suddenly you are no longer distracted by what once consumed you. Your soul becomes fertile ground for His voice, His healing, His direction. And that's when you realize that what you thought was a breakdown was actually a breakthrough. God doesn't just take things away. He always replaces, always restores, always resurrects. But He does it on His terms and in His timing. The reason many of us stay stuck in the pain of endings is because we're still trying to understand why it happened. But sometimes God doesn't give explanations. He offers invitations. An invitation to trust Him, to move forward, to believe again, to open your hands and say, God, I don't understand it, but I surrender to it. And when you do that, you create room for new beginnings to take root. The enemy will try to convince you that your best days are behind you, that the loss you experienced was final, that nothing good can come out of your brokenness. But God has a different narrative. He says all things work together for the good of those who love Him. That means even your heartbreak has purpose, even your loss has meaning. What was torn down will be rebuilt. What was taken will be restored. What was painful will become powerful. And the ending you thought would destroy you will actually deliver you into your destiny. Your future is set apart and requires pruning. When God has chosen you for something greater, He begins a process of shaping, refining, and purifying your life. One of the most misunderstood parts of that process is divine pruning. In the natural world, pruning is the cutting away of branches, not to harm the plant, but to help it bear more fruit. The same principle applies in the spiritual realm. God doesn't prune you because He's angry or disappointed. He prunes you because He sees the fruit you're capable of producing, and He won't let anything, especially the wrong people or unnecessary attachments, stop that fruit from growing to its full potential. Being chosen doesn't just come with favor, it comes with responsibility. And that responsibility requires separation. It demands clarity. It involves saying goodbye to what is good in order to step into what is God. There are relationships that were fine in your last season, but are no longer suitable for where God is taking you. There are habits, mindsets, and comforts that may have helped you survive, but they cannot help you thrive. So God begins to cut things away. And at first, it feels like loss. It feels like rejection. It feels like being left behind. But in truth, it's the evidence that you're being prepared for something higher, something holier, something that carries eternal weight. When you are being prepared for destiny, comfort becomes a lesser priority. God is not trying to make you popular. He's trying to make you powerful. And real power requires focus, obedience, and purity of heart. You cannot carry the oil of heaven while staying entangled in distractions. You cannot walk in divine authority while staying connected to people who dishonor your calling. You cannot fully receive the future God has for you while still clinging to fragments of the past. So pruning becomes necessary. Painful, yes, but necessary. God's pruning is strategic. He removes what seems good in order to make room for what is God-ordained. He will cut away a relationship that makes you feel secure if it's stunting your growth. He will strip away opportunities that flatter your ego if they don't feed your spirit. He will allow isolation, not as punishment, but as preparation. Sometimes He will even allow you to be misunderstood, rejected, or left alone so that your roots can go deeper into Him. The deeper the roots, the stronger the tree and the greater the fruit. That is His ultimate goal, not temporary comfort, but lasting impact. You were not created to fit in, you were called to stand out. You were not chosen for the crowd, you were chosen for the cross. And with that calling comes a life of pruning, not because you are weak, but because you are called to bear much fruit. Some people are not being pruned because they are not being prepared. But when God has set you apart, He doesn't let you settle. He doesn't let you stay surrounded by what hinders. He steps in and begins to carve away everything that does not reflect His purpose in your life. And though the process may hurt, the outcome will bring glory. Pruning is proof of God's hand on you. It's His way of saying, I see more in you than you see in yourself. It's His way of ensuring that you don't waste your potential on things that look good but lead nowhere. You may cry over what was cut, but heaven rejoices over what's coming. You may mourn the separation, but your spirit will soon celebrate the clarity. Because once the pruning is done, the promise will flourish. The future God has designed for you is not ordinary. It is sacred. And that kind of future requires a life that has been trimmed, purified, and prepared to carry the weight of His glory. Beloved, the journey of being chosen is not easy, but it is sacred. Every removal, every separation, every painful ending is not a sign of abandonment, but evidence of divine love at work. God is not trying to hurt you. He is preparing you. The people who left weren't rejected by you. They were released by God. The relationships that faded didn't end by accident. They ended by assignment. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. Heaven sees what you cannot. And the pruning, though painful, is a sure sign that greater fruit is coming. You may not understand why some people couldn't stay. You may not see clearly why certain doors had to close. But you can rest knowing that your future is guarded by the hand of God. He removes not to leave you empty, but to fill you with better. He separates not to isolate, but to elevate. You are being led, shaped, and covered by a God who knows the ending from the beginning. So take heart and do not weep over what was. Lift your eyes and trust in what is to come, because where God is taking you, only those assigned by Him can follow. You are being prepared for glory. You are being aligned with purpose. And every ending was a setup for the beautiful, blessed beginning He's about to reveal. Thank you for allowing this word to speak to your spirit today. May the peace of God continue to guard your heart. May His wisdom guide your steps, and may His love remind you that you are never alone in your journey. Stay faithful, stay ready, and above all, stay yielded to His perfect will. God bless you.